Hello friends of the PipeCat channel. Larry with you again. Thanks for coming by. This is a hard one for me to do. I wanted to share something with you of a very, very personal nature. A very tragic event that has taken place in my life. The reason why I chose the handle of PipeCat for my YouTube channel a few years ago was because I wanted the title of the name of the channel to reflect, things that were important to me. I love smoking a pipe, obviously. And as you've probably seen many times, that I surround myself with cats. I have 3 cats, and I've mentioned a few times. I've got Sweet Pea, who is snoring in a chair right next to me as I talk to you now. I have Benny, who is probably asleep in another room. And up until 1 week ago, I had Joon. You've seen Joon. She's the tuxedo cat that has wandered through so many of my videos. And the basic gist of the story is that I lost Joon on Thanksgiving Day of 2020, which was 1 week ago today as I make this video. And frankly, I've been kind of lost because my heart has soft spots for certain things, and among them are, people with challenges, underprivileged children, elderly people, and animals, especially small house type animals, pets. I've never owned horses or herded cows or anything like that, but I certainly have had plenty of pets. And the reason why I call this channel the PipeCat channel is mostly because of my cat Joon. And I'd like to just tell you about her if you're willing to listen. If you're not a cat lover, don't watch the rest of this video. I probably won't have the comments turned on. If I do, it'll be a surprise even to me that I let it happen, because I don't think I could bear to hear any negativity. And I already know the condolences that friends would leave. And many of you are very kind. Almost all of you are very kind. And I know the kinds of things that you would say. And I'll thank you in advance for those kinds of thoughts. But I'm going to tell you a story like I tend to do. In June of 2008, the month of June 2008, I had to euthanize my beloved cat whose name was Prudence, and I had her for 22 years. And I always said to myself that she's the greatest pet I'll ever have. My close friend, Prudence, started out, my mother found her in a field before a hurricane in Rhode Island in 1986. Yeah. And She and her boyfriend, who she lived with at the time, they lived in a mobile home. And she was outside before a big storm came, and she thought she heard something making little mewing sounds. So she searched out in a field of tall grass next to her house. Sure enough, she found a little litter of kittens. She didn't know if they were all there or if some were missing, but there was a massive storm moving in. And she convinced her boyfriend, whose name was Frank, to gather them up, put them in a box. They looked high and low for the mother cat, couldn't find her. They searched all over until they said, "Get inside," Frank said to my mother. I don't see the mother cat. We're just going to have to take these kittens and go. They brought her inside. They weathered the storm. They managed to give away most of the kittens to neighbors, shelters. And my mother kept 2 of them. She kept a gray, Russian blue looking one, a little gray one, and named her Squeaky because of her meow. And she kept a long-haired, orange striped cat that she named Prudence. Now, they were litter mates, but they didn't look anything alike. Very typical of cats. Well, as time went by, Prudence and Squeaky always stayed together. They were never separated. My mother broke up with that boyfriend, and she needed a place to put the cats. They stayed with this sister and that sister. Eventually, Prudence and Squeaky came to live with me. And that would have been around, boy, let me see. Well, yeah, probably around 2000, I think, when I inherited them. Tragically, a few years later, Squeaky was frightened by a carpenter who came to work in my apartment while I was at work, and stupidly left a door open while he ran a skill saw in my hallway. And Squeaky ran out, and Prudence hid. Prudence hid somewhere under the bed, but Squeaky escaped. I found Squeaky 6 weeks later, profoundly dehydrated, and all of her organs had failed her. I brought her to a vet who told me, well, let's leave her on an IV drip overnight and see what happens. Well, a careless technician at that vet left the drip too high and went home. And Squeaky died in the night of organ failure from overhydration. My family was devastated. Well, Prudence was left with me. Prudence was still with me. And I kept her until she was 22 years old. And she had made it to old age. I mean, she was so tired, and she was so weak, and her fur was oily and ragged, and she couldn't move anymore. And on that day, I called my mother and I called my sisters, and I said, today's the day for Prudence, I think. And so I had a long time to watch Prudence get old, and we took her in and had her euthanized. I'm telling you that story because Prudence was the best cat I'd ever known. She was sweet and kind and playful and funny. And when she and her sister Squeaky, years before, both had litters, they both escaped my apartment one day, and they both came home pregnant. When they had litters, Prudence would jump out of her box into Squeaky's box and take Squeaky's 2 little kittens that she had and put them in her box with her, and she would nurse them because Squeaky wasn't as motherly. I don't know how else to put it. Prudence was a type A personality, and when she would hear them making little mewing sounds in the other box, she would leave her kittens there, jump up, go get the other 2, and carry them into this box and nurse them all together. And Squeaky didn't mind. That's the kind of cat Prudence was. And if Prudence, after that, of course, she was spayed, and then anytime she got out after that, she always came home. So she was a partially indoor, partially outdoor cat, Prudence was. I lost Prudence in the month of June of 2008 from old age. And then my sister had a new cat a little cat who she named Sweet Pea. This one right here, lying next to me. Sweet Pea looked almost exactly like Squeaky from years before. So it's always a kind of a point of confusion with, as I get older, I keep confusing the two because their names are similar and they look alike. But anyway, Sweet Pea escaped from my sister's house at about 10 months old and came home pregnant. She had 2 kittens. She was a tiny cat. Sweet Pea was tiny, and she only had room for 2, so she had 2 kittens. And we named them after that movie, Benny and Joon. Joon was actually born first. Black and white tuxedo. And the spelling of the name from the movie is Joon. That's how she got her name. And every vet that's ever seen her name is like, I think this is misspelled. No, it's not. So, Benny and Joon needed a place to go, and so did Sweet Pea, because my sister was moving out of her apartment, and the place that she was going wasn't going to allow her to have the cats. And they knew that I was devastated from the loss of Prudence just a few months before. Benny and Joon were born on September 30th of 2008, late at night, in a dresser drawer in my sister's bedroom. And by January of 2009, I had them living with me, all 3 of them. With the promise from my sister that when she got a place where she could have the cats, or if she could convince her new landlord to let her have them, that she would take them back. Well, that was a long time ago. She never did get that permission. In fact, when she did get it, she went out and got new cats. But by then, Sweet Pea, Benny, and Joon were my cats. And they've had a happy life here. They've eaten well. They have been healthy except for occasional little illnesses the cats get, but never anything serious. Well, about 5 weeks ago, I noticed that Joon was feeling a little thin. When I petted her on the back, I could feel her spine. I never could feel her spine before. She was otherwise happy and bright and pert and playful as she ever was, but losing weight. I got a little concerned about it. I said I'll keep an eye on her. Well, maybe 2 or 3 weeks went by after that. And I noticed that her appetite had lessened. And she was a little more withdrawn every day. She would take 2-3 bites of breakfast in the morning instead of the voracious appetite she's always had. And then she would just kind of walk away a little bit listlessly and lie down in the living room, on the rug, which wasn't like her either. She always wanted an interesting place to sleep, but she was just settling for the floor now. And about 2 weeks ago, I began to notice that she wasn't able to go to the litter box. She would go and she would try and nothing would happen. She never meowed once. She never complained. Never showed me any sign that she was in pain. But every few minutes she would go over to that litter box and try and do something. I said something's wrong. So in a panic, on not this past Monday, today's Thursday, but not this past Monday, but the Monday before, I put her in the cat carrier for the first time in years. Brought her to the vet, local vet, and the vet said, well, I feel a mass in her abdomen. Could be a blockage. She may need surgery. So they did some diagnostic testing. They took some samples of the mass through a needle. They aspirated it, and the results that came back were inconclusive. They said, well, it's got a lot of occult blood in it, dead blood cells, but we really can't tell. She really needs to have an ultrasound to look at the nature of this thing and see what it is. Don't wait another day because she could probably have an intestinal rupture and die in agony. I said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. So I literally left that vet's office and went straight to a surgical hospital across town from me here. They're a training hospital, a veterinary school. And boy, they ain't cheap. It is the place where I had Prudence euthanized many years ago. And so I've always hated the association of the place. So when I showed up with Joon and the cat carrier to go to that place in the COVID world, where you couldn't even go inside with her, you had to wait in a parking lot while someone came out and got her like she was nuclear waste with the mask on. And I waited 4 hours in the parking lot that night, haggling her life away with a veterinarian from that school. For 4 hours I sat in that parking lot, finally got a phone call from the vet, only to tell me, well, I think she needs an ultrasound. And I said, I've been waiting here for hours to find out what the ultrasound said. She said, oh no, we haven't even talked price yet. That's the industry. So after we negotiated for my cat's life, she says, well then, we'll have to keep her and see if someone's available. Well, by the time I got an answer back about her, and what they were going to do, an action plan, it was Wednesday night now, and they'd had her overnight. And they said, well, hopefully we can get someone in here on Thursday, which is Thanksgiving Day. Hopefully we can get an emergency crew in here to first do the ultrasound. But you see, we can't do the ultrasound without the surgeon present because she may need emergency surgery. So we have to call in an on-call emergency surgeon on Thanksgiving Day for your cat. Understand that this is, first of all, not going to be cheap. And second of all, we don't even know the condition of the cat. All this being said, Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning, and by the way, I wasn't allowed to go to Thanksgiving with my family because I had been exposed to COVID about a week before. I didn't have it. I don't have it now. But this was like my third exposure of COVID and having to self-quarantine. I couldn't go to Thanksgiving anyway, so I was home. And I got the call about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the vet said to me, we just performed the ultrasound. I said, okay, are they going to operate? She says, there'd be no point. This mass is a tumor in her colon. She can't pass anything past it. And not only is there a tumor in her colon, but she's got tiny nodules all over her body. It has metastasized, and she's got cancer everywhere. She's rapidly dying. Although, so far, she doesn't seem to be in any real pain. So I had to make the decision that morning to end it before she suffered. And sparing you the gory ending details, that's what I did. My sister Lisa came from a few towns away. She'd always been my rock. And she drove. And we went there to see Junie for the last time. They let us in the hospital with masks on, of course. This was an extenuating circumstance. And I held her in my arms. Many prayers were said. Many thanks for being my cat and for bringing me so much happiness. And June's life ended at about 3 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving Day 2020. So I had about a month of knowledge that she may be in trouble, never really knowing until the very end that she was in big trouble. She had no medical history of anything like it before. And she was the light of my life, really. Some men say that about their women. Some men say that about their children. I have neither in my life. I mean, I have children in the family. My niece my nieces and my nephew, and and I love them, but they're not my offspring. And I don't have a woman in my life right now either. I just haven't been inclined to have one. But Joon was not really a pet. Joon was not, I don't look at her like my child. Some people say, oh, these are my babies. She wasn't my baby. She was a friend like none other that I've ever had. She's the reason why I'm PipeCat. And she loved to play games, and she loved shrimp. Oh my God, she'd tear your arm off to get a piece of shrimp. She had so many little quirks and funny little routines. She was so incredibly intelligent. And she even knew when you weren't feeling good. She just would be so gentle if I was sick. And so for the last 12 years, she was pretty much the light of my life. And I'm really devastated. And today was the first day that I've actually been able to tell this story without bursting into horrifying tears and crying jags. Sweet Pea here, her mother, was the only living being on the planet that didn't like her. Sweet Pea always hissed at her and swatted at her. I never knew why. Never liked her. Her whole life. Had no tolerance for her. Maybe it's a mother-daughter thing, I don't know. Benny, on the other hand, well, he associated with her, but, they were just kind of more or less chummy, but they weren't like, they were literally fraternal twins, but they didn't hang out together all the time. They didn't have similar interests, the two of them. Benny's a little bit grumpy. He's very big. He's extremely strong. He's got an attitude. He loves to push buttons. So, you love Benny like a brother, sort of. Like the big brother that you have to respect. And Sweet Pea, well, she's just Sweet Pea. She loves to lounge. She eats and she sleeps. And she loves to drink ice water. That's Sweet Pea. She wants attention for about 10 minutes every day, and then she sleeps the rest of the day away. Fat old Sweet Pea. But my Joon was... She's what made me feel good every day. When I got up in the morning, she was my alarm clock for everything. She meowed when it was time for me to get out of bed. She meowed when it was time for them to eat. And I knew her language. Her meow was different for everything that she wanted or wanted me to know about. She had a little happy dance that she would do. When I got up out of bed in the morning, she saw me get out of the bed. She would run to the door frame of my bedroom and do this little scratch thing on the door frame in a certain posture, not meaning to pull out any wood, just to show me that she was excited that I was up. She had a game that she loved to play. When things got quiet around here, she would walk to a little spot in the hallway between the bedrooms over there, with her back to the wall. She would plant herself, and she would make this little mewing noise, just a little meow. Not protracted, just a little meow. And I'd get up and I'd walk over there and I'd see her sitting there, and her posture said it all. We had a game that we called Hey Joon. She would put her back there and she'd sit in that one spot and she would stare. Her eyes would rivet on the rug in front of her. And my job was to go to the kitchen doorway and lean on the doorway and pick up the little red lasered mouse, with a little mouse that shoots a laser. And I would have to hold it up in the air, which she would notice. Her ears would be twitching. And I would have to say the words, Hey Joon. Just like that. Hey Joon. When I did that, her body would lock rigid, and she'd wait to see where that dot landed. And her ears could hear the little button on the mouse go click. They could hear that. And as soon as she heard that, man, it was like she was zoomed in on that rug like a fighter jet looking for a target. And when that dot appeared, she would chase it, but she would chase it in a certain way. I had to do it a certain way. I had to first run horseshoe shapes in front of her, around her, like this, so that her head would go back and forth. That had to happen. And then I had to go in a circle around her, and that's what she was waiting for. She would be basically in place and spinning like a top. And if I reversed direction, she would reverse direction. The goal was she wanted to make herself dizzy. So when she chased it in a circle about 5-6 times and then went the other way 2-3 times, she'd stop and be wobbly. And the first time that I ever did that to her, I felt sorry. I was like, oh no, I hope I didn't make her sick. Come to find out, she was addicted to the dizziness. She would wobble around and sit down and be sideways for a couple of seconds and then immediately go back to that pose again and be staring at the rug. She wanted more. I'd have to do that probably 4 or 5 times before she'd be all tuckered out from it, and then she'd go sleep somewhere or go eat something. That was the game of Hey Joon. I had a cat tree behind me for all those years, and she would sleep 7 feet high on the highest platform. That was her sleeping spot. At night, that's where she slept. And sometimes she would run up there and she would meow down from there at me while I was at my computer desk here. Sometimes talking to you guys. And I would have to take this little string that had a plastic knob on the end of it, and it was tied to the post of the platform that she was on, and I would have to get down in the shadows where she couldn't see it and toss it up to her from outside of her field of view so she could see it coming from nowhere, so she could swat the little plastic ball. She never missed. She was like a ninja. That ball would come at her at any speed or from any direction, and she just turned and swat it out of the air. And sometimes when she was done playing, she would signify that by hooking the string in the air and pulling on it like a fish on a line. And I'd have to tug on it and pretend that I couldn't get it away from her and watch her little arm coming down over the side of the platform until she finally released it. And then we were done with that game. But you know, when you're stuck in the house and you have physical challenges and can't get around much, you hear all the time, your favorite cat becomes your best friend. I have best friends in the world. I've got great friends. I've got band members. I've got, co-workers. And of course my family. But Joon was her own thing. Our relationship together was its own unique individual friendship. I've never had one like it. And I don't think I'll ever have one again. I remember back to the days of Prudence. For 22 years, what a wonderful cat she was. But one thing Prudence had was freedom. She could go outside. She had other associations with other cats. She had multiple owners, but Junie only ever had one. I mean, she lived with my sister when she was born for just a couple of months until she was weaned, and then for the rest of her life, she was with me. First, for about a year in another apartment before this one. And then about 11 years ago, we moved here together, and she's been here ever since. She had not left this apartment in 11 years. Oh yeah, once when I took her to be spayed. That was it. And that's right after we moved in here, really. Well, we'd been here a few months. She was still young. I took her and her mother to have them spayed. And that's the only time those two had ever left the house. Joon never left the house again until the week she passed away. Sweepy had been into the vet a couple of times for infections. Benny, nope, same with him. He was same as Joon. Benny, he's never been fixed. He's still got all his standard equipment. And he's not left this apartment either in 12 years, except that he goes out the hallway sometimes. To him, that's outside. He goes in the kitchen and meows at the door, and I say, you want to go outside? And he goes out in the hallway, and my neighbors tolerate him walking up and down. And then I let him back in. But I had to say goodbye to my Joon, and I wanted to mark the occasion with to tell her story. Because no one really knows it except me. My family knows it in bits and pieces. And now you know the basic gist of it. So I had to say goodbye to my reason for being PipeCat. If you Look over my shoulder, you'll see there's a cardboard box back there. That is a guitar that I've been waiting 2 years to get. And I won't open that box. It showed up a few days ago. Because you know why? Because I don't have Joon here to walk around and sniff it and scratch it and try and open it. How's that for sentimental? Can't bring myself to do it. I will, and it'll be an interesting video when I do. But I don't think I'm ready yet. And so Thanksgiving Day, I did give thanks. I gave thanks for 12 years of the best friend I ever had. The sweetest little angel. She had no issues. She was never a behavior problem. Never. Not once. I can't think of one time that I ever wanted to reprimand her for anything, or I never felt like, you can't punish a cat anyway, but I never felt like it. I never had to. She never did anything wrong. So if you rewatch any of my videos and you see the little tuxedo cat walking around, that's Joon. She will be sorely missed, and my life has changed now. I can't replace what she meant to me, so I've got to find strength in other things. And I guess that's about it. Thank you for, if you made it all the way to the end of this, then you are a friend, and I thank you. Say a prayer for Joon, and cherish your own little friends. And I'll be back again on a happier note soon. Thanks, guys. Take care of yourselves.
You want chips?